Varmt välkomna till LB förlag där vi idag ska prata med den amerikanska författaren T.I. Lowe som snart i februari kommer ut med Under magnoliaträden. Nu har hon precis kommit in i väntrummet här på Zoom och vi ska släppa in henne. Hello there, T.I. Lowe. Can you hear us? Can you hear me well? Hello. Hello. You know, we selected a white background not to take focus from you, and that was absolutely right. Look at your background.
Oh, thank you.
Amazing. Are there actual
it.
yes, are there actual magnolias around you now? These wooden things there, or
Those are
ooh.
flowers made from book pages my children made for me.
That is amazing. They should sell
you.
them to Swedish audiences. You can all become a family of stars. So first of all, what time is it there? Because it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon here in Stockholm, but you're in South Carolina. So what time
It's
is
10
it?
in the morning.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
you've just
not
woken
bad.
up? No?
Hmm?
You've just woken up? No.
Oh, no. It's been a while.
Yes. So first of all, let's introduce you a bit to our Swedish audiences. I'm going to bring this book up and down.
Look at that.
So in Swedish, you would pronounce this Under magnoliaträden. So
I'm not even going to try it.
don't try it, but it actually means literally the same. Sometimes you get a bad translation of titles abroad. This literally means Under the Magnolias, like your original title. But but please start by introducing yourself a little bit to our readers, please.
Well, I'm T.I. Lowe. Those are my initials. It stands for Tanya Inez Lowe. I am from South Carolina, as you said, Lisa, and I feel like I'm just a Southern storyteller. I like to tell a story, and so far I've published 17 books. People seem to like them okay.
I think that's a very, very high number. You've been extremely productive, and I think your readers love you for it, right? They love that they don't have to wait 10 or 20 years for the next novel. You're so productive. Yeah. But this was not your first book, was it? No.
My first book was Lulu's Cafe.
Yes.
In 2014. And that was a promise to my mom. She passed away the year before. It was already written. I was a stay-at-home mom. So my focus was taking care of my family, and my mom was battling cancer. So it was taking care of her. And I just always enjoyed telling stories, but I didn't feel like it would, be made into a book one day. So, but she told me, she says, Tanya, one day you've got to promise me that you're going to pursue this. And so after her passing, to keep my promise to her, I put Lulu's Cafe out into the world. Yes. And that's where it started, 2014.
And you did this yourself. You were so, I mean, you took every opportunity to not just produce it and put it out there yourself, but also market it yourself, right? And it became a bestseller. You have to tell us about this journey a little bit. How did you even choose a printer, or how did you know how to pick a cover? How did you make your own debut like that?
You know how some people say you fall into things?
Yeah.
I tripped into it and I smashed my nose and everything else. I mean, it was a hot mess. I just did some research. I try to tell my kids, if there's something out there you want to do, you want to pursue it, put the work in. I had no idea what I was doing, but at the time, Amazon had this wonderful program that was becoming a pretty hot ticket with Kindle Direct Publishing. And so I did the research on that and figured out how to put it out there myself. My favorite flowers, sunflowers. Yeah. So it had to be in the sunflower theme. And so that's where the cover come from. But I figured out how to put it out there. I put it out there in January, and I didn't tell anybody I did it. for a month or so. It was just
that's very clever, just to see how it went. Yeah.
yeah, well, it's just like I promised my mom, so I just checked it off the list and it was done.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to get a hold of me when I finally told them that, but and then by May of that year, it was on bestsellers list. So it was just meant to be. God took care of it, and it doesn't feel like anything I did. It just happened.
It's just an amazing story, and a kind of a story in itself, I guess. But then going from that, from a kind of one-off a success, a debut novel, not everyone manages to keep being a productive writer. I mean, how did you even come up? Because that idea was so special and so unique to you, right? And so connected to everything that happened to your mother. How did book number 2 come about? Was that another process of writing altogether, or?
It just seemed like once people, writing's very personal. They're yours, and I was scared to death to put it out there. I remember when I finally put it out there and started telling people, my jaw stayed sore all the time. It was just like stress on sharing that, but it was accepted, and it just seemed like once people were accepting it and they were asking for more, like the floodgates opened, and I couldn't write it fast enough. So and I write how I talk.
Yeah.
Like it's not, it's just Southern, like I'm having a conversation. So I don't know if that connects with readers more so.
Yeah.
More personal level. And I try one of my readers told me this once, and it stuck with me. I write grit with grace. And so
that's a wonderful description. Yeah.
Don't sugarcoat things, but just put it out there, and it connects with the readers, I believe.
Yeah, but you also, now you have readers all the way in Sweden, but I was going to say the Southern charm and all the stories about the Southern states in America, obviously, they're documented in fiction and in big Hollywood films, and of course small independent films as well. So even here in Sweden, we know quite a lot about the South. But do you think there's also a lot of cliches about the South? I mean, what is that something you have to work against as well, or?
Yeah, well, there's this saying, it says, just because I talk slow doesn't mean I'm ignorant, so to speak. And that was one of my, it was a hang up for me. I'm not educated in writing. I don't have a degree in it. And then of course I've got this Southern drawl that, I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I don't feel like people take me seriously, but it's my hang up. It's not with the world. So I feel like we're sort of our worst enemies on some things.
Yeah. But you also have readers across the US, not just from, it's not just they who recognize this. And I guess it's because your themes are so universal. And it's interesting because one of the themes in this book is, of course, mental health and how we care for our closest and daring to reach out for help. And this is a big discussion, of course, as well in Sweden and all of Europe, I suppose, about mental health and just getting over the stigma and the trauma and not keeping it within the family, but as actually daring to ask for help. So I would imagine this would resonate with so many readers, right? That have had experience, not themselves, but maybe family members, if not themselves.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely opened a discussion, and that's really what I wanted to do with the book. The magnolia tree is so symbolic in it. My husband, he's all about landscaping, and he's got a degree in trees and such. And he said, so here in the South, magnolia trees are quite popular.
Yeah.
And one of the sayings is, people said, I love the magnolia tree, but in my neighbor's yard because they're a mess. But my husband said it's because they groom them wrong. You're not supposed to cut the branches underneath, the limbs underneath. You're supposed to let it go all the way to the ground because they're self-contained trees. All of the debris is supposed to hide underneath the skirt of the tree.
Oh, that's so clever. Nature knows best.
Yes. And so it's all about, so that theme I took about hiding things. And But us as humans, it's not always a good thing to hide. You know, we'll hide behind a smile. We'll hide behind, you know, the walls of our house, like Miss Wise did.
Yeah.
But so many times that just it causes a bigger mess. And so I'm hoping that this will open it up so people want to talk about it more. Because even, you know, I said it in the 80s, because sometimes, have you realized, Lisa, if you take some steps back from a situation, you can see it clearer.
Yes, very true. Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I wanted to set it in the 80s but it's really a problem today that we're still dealing with, the stigmatism and the not wanting to talk about it. Yeah. So I'm hoping that'll open it up and people realize it's not such a good thing to hide. You know?
No. And also tell us about a little bit, without spoilers, of course, because it's just literally coming out this week now in Sweden. So no one's read it yet, but there's such a big group of interesting characters. And I mean, you have this strong female young lead, but then of all ages and characters. And how many of them are inspired by real life now? Your neighbors or people you went to school with?
One thing I do when I write, I mean, I believe you can't see someone. I'm definitely a people watcher, just picking up on different people. And you can't write a book, I don't believe, without putting a little piece of you in it. Yeah. But I want my characters to be individuals themselves. So I try not to base them on anyone. Yeah. And as a reader, I love to read. I'm an avid reader, but I don't like a lot of characters in a book. I like, just this certain one so I can stick to them and follow them through the story. Mm-hmm. And then when I started writing this one, it's the most characters I've ever put in a book.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
But each one had so much to tell. And so I fell in love with all of them. One of the things back in the 80s and before then is families in the South would have big families. They'd have a lot of children to help take care of the farm. Yeah. So I had to have a lot of siblings to go with that situation. But then I had Dave, the father that's dealing with some situations. I needed people that were in his life to come forward later on in the book. So that's where Miss Foxy and Miss Wise and all of these side characters come from. But I fall in love with side characters too. So
some of them are almost stealing. You call it like scenery chewing, right? In a good movie where you have a real strong character actor who just comes in and everyone's eyes is on him or her. Do you think any of these side characters will return in your coming novels, or even the main characters?
Yeah. Peg has stuck with me more so than any of the other characters. He's one of the brothers, and he's the one. A lot of times, Austin, she's our main female. There's things she couldn't say to help keep the family together. But, I wanted people to know she was thinking it too. So her younger brother, Peg, we call him Peg. Yeah. His name was Phoenix. He said what we wanted to say, I felt like a lot of times. Oh, yeah. And I loved his bluntness. And so I could see him popping up sometime, but as of right now, no. But you have written several series though. What's the difference? Do you know when you start writing a new novel that this will become a series of like 4 or 5 books, or is it going to be a one-off? No. You don't know when you set out. No. The only one, my Carolina Coast series, that was the one before Under the Magnolias. That was set to be a series about 3 friends. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that was going to be a series. But a lot, the other ones, I had no idea. But it was just like that side character kept talking to me after I wrote the first one. Yep. And so it would develop into another story. So that's how those come about. But it's a lot of times those side characters, they get me. They have more to say. Yeah. And again, just for the readers, as they know nothing as yet of this book. So Austin, she's barely turned 14. Her mother dies unexpectedly, and she's left alone to care for her 6 siblings, and in a way, her father as well.
but they have to run this tobacco farm, and this is exotic, of course, to Swedish readers. So because obviously all these themes of love and mental health, caring, these are absolutely universal themes. So I mean, the book as a whole, I suppose, could be read by anyone anywhere in the world. But tobacco farms, do you have any experience of this, being a Southerner yourself?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My first job was on a tobacco farm.
Oh wow.
Yes. And it was the hardest job I've ever had, but it taught me the most. It taught me about the importance of hard work. It taught me about how, and it's one thing that I've taught to my kids: don't leave something for someone else to do that you can take care of yourself. It's all about, doing your part. And so, I've had that experience, and there's still tobacco farms around. I remember while I was riding under the magnolias, right next door was a tobacco field. And one day I had my husband stop to pluck a tobacco leaf just so I could remember the texture and the smell of it. So it's still one of the crops around here.
Yeah, it's interesting. But now in the 80s, what would you say, what has changed in southern US from the 80s up until now? What have been the biggest changes, would you say, if you read this today?
Probably, well, the terms used for mental illness back then were different. It wasn't bipolar disorder, it was manic depression.
Yes.
And how they handled treatment back then was different. I often tell people, I said, mental illness was a challenge in itself. And I guess I had to go and make it harder on myself to go put it in the 80s, because it's really, even though I feel like we still have a long ways to go accepting it and being able to, talk about it freely. The entire process, the treatments and everything's a lot different. So that's one of the main things that I feel like is different. I don't know about in Sweden, but the fashion is going back around. We're looking more like the 80s. Yeah, I'm wearing a pair of acid wash jeans, and I had those in the 80s. So it's pretty funny that the fashion's coming back around.
Yeah, this is when you start to feel old. It's the same thing here. You remember and you think that looks like a geeky kid I went to school with when I was 6, and you realize, but these are the cool chicks now. So this is interesting. Absolutely. But also one thing that's interesting, I think, is that you've put this mental health heavy luggage on the dad, because obviously in the 80s it was much more difficult with stereotypes of what a man is, about being macho and what real masculinity is. And if you're a real straight white guy, you're a provider and you're not supposed to show any weakness. At least in Europe that has changed. How would you say it's now where you live in South Carolina? Is it more, can a guy be open about his weaknesses, even a husband, without feeling that he is compromising his identity in a way or being weak?
I think it goes back, you remember how I said my not being educated, college education, my Southern twang, it's on me a lot. And I feel like it's still on the men. I feel like I would accept if my husband came to me and said, I'm struggling with this. But I still feel like men don't, I'm not going to say men in general, but, it's still hard for men in my area to show weakness. They still want to be that strength to their family. Family's pretty important around here. So I still feel like it's a struggle. I remember and then the entire reason why I started this idea of this book was I wanted to understand it better. For a while there, every time I pulled up Facebook or any kind of social thing, headline news, that I saw where men were committing suicide, and they were prominent figures in the community, whether in church or a community leader. And my whole thing was I didn't understand why now still they didn't feel like they could reach out for help. And so that's where it really began.
I think this is so important, because that is the ultimate consequence in a way of one of these books' themes about reaching out for help. And that would be the ultimate consequence if you do not reach out for help for you or a loved one. I mean, this is what could happen. So I think it's great that you bring it up. And also what's special here is that you have put in, or have you or your publisher put in a list of really good it's songs at the beginning, songs at the end, but there's also like topics of discussion if you want to start a book circle.
Yes.
Yeah.
From the very beginning, music's always it's always been an inspiration to me. And from the beginning with Lulu's Cafe, I've always put a playlist in the back of the books, simply because I used them during my writing process.
Yeah.
I remember Creedence Clearwater Revival's always been one of my favorite bands, and Have You Seen the Rain? And that was, I listened to that so much while I was writing this book, because it just really pulled at me. Yeah. And so when I signed with my publisher, I was glad that they agreed that I could keep putting those playlists in the books, because readers really enjoy those.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I love these songs. I think It's Gonna Rain Today by Bette Midler. Dancing in the Dark is a real classic by Bruce Springsteen. Yeah. And it's wonderful because it sets that 80s flavor to it as well. But also the topics of discussion, I think they're also really, really good, because what's really popular in Sweden are book circles. You must have so many readers that are doing book circles. Yeah. Yes. And they're using these questions of discussion, right?
Yes. I've had such a fun time. I mean, I'm sad that, you know, we're not able to go in public a lot because of the virus, but Zoom's come about. And so just a couple nights ago, I did a Zoom with a group in Arizona. And, and so, you know, I'm in South Carolina, they're in Arizona, and it was a book club, and I just love to hear what they have to say about it. And
what did they say? Tell me a few things that they thought, like their first reactions.
They love Peg.
Yeah.
Not to give the book away. One of my things is life is heavy, and so I crack a joke. I have to laugh, and sometimes it's cheesy. Sometimes I probably do it in the wrong spot, but when I'm writing, I have to do it too. There were some pretty heavy moments in this book, but not to give it away, but there's a funeral home scene. And they loved the funeral home scene. They enjoyed the laughs that I added to it. So it's fun to hear their take on things. And so I love to do the Zooms. I did, you know, all over the United States. So that's one of the things that I really love, small groups and getting to talk to readers on a more personal basis. And I feel like I'm just glad that, you know, Zoom's made that possible. I mean, look at us. You're in Sweden. I'm all the way in South Carolina today, and I get to.
I know, and we probably wouldn't be doing this because it wouldn't be so common. We'd probably just do an email interview, which is so much less personal. But I'm so glad you brought that up, because one of the special features I think about this book is your combination of like you say, these very heavy topics, the heavy scenes, and the grit, and then suddenly sense of humor. And you have a question here at the back, which is, you know, how were you affected as a reader by the father's private struggle with mental health? Did you feel compassion with him, or did you want to kick him in the butt, or both? I just translated straight up, but that's what it's like in Swedish. And I love that, because it's also like, you know, although it's really tragic and frustrating, it's still like, just get up. You know, there must, if you live with someone who has a depression or something like that, there is still that sense of, oh God, just do something about it. And you really managed to nail that that kind of human that human quality of it's darkness with light all the time. And this balance, I think it's amazing. But listen, if you would summarize this book, here's a difficult question. If you would summarize it in just a few sentences, someone who's looking at this and they say, oh, this sounds lovely. Publishers Weekly say it's a very strong coming of age story. The reader's going to love it. It's gripping, and it's about loneliness and mental ill health. But how would you describe it from the heart?
Definitely Southern coming of age. if you enjoy Where the Crawdads Sing, it's definitely a book for you. It's raw. It's just like you said, it's gritty. It's compelling in a way that you can relate to it, even if you're not going through that struggle. It's hard to summarize it just like that.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I love the comparisons with the Crawdads Sing. It's been a big hit here in Sweden. I think it's opened up a lot of people's eyes too. I mean, would you say, is this Southern literature? Can you even say that, like modern Southern literature?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have your own genre anyway.
Now I have to ask you, when you're doing the translations, we say y'all. How's it there?
Y'all. You're not going to be able to pronounce it. but I think in Swedish that's like hörni alla. Yeah. It's
I often wonder, I said, it's got to be hard for translations because of Southern drawl, because we have our own language down here in the South.
Yeah, it's a very funny question, because actually the southern parts of Sweden are very different from the northern parts of Sweden, and Stockholm, where we are in the capital, is just in the middle. So we're just looking up north, and we think they're a bit special in one way, and we can't really understand the strongest accents of the South. But I guess the southern parts of all countries are more about farming and agriculture, and an open climate, and closeness to beaches, and it breeds one mentality. And then the darker north, I suppose there are universal.
It is, I believe so.
North characters, yeah.
My husband's grandma, she's from up north in the United States, and the first time I met her, she told my husband, she says, well, she's a sweet girl, but I couldn't understand a word she said. And that's the United States.
The same country, but you're such a massive country that yeah. But listen, do you think you're going to come to Europe at some point now that your books are selling here?
I would love to. My son, he is a junior in college, and he said for graduation he would love to go to Europe. So that would be wonderful to do that.
That would be amazing. Then we will book your ticket from wherever you are in Europe to come to Stockholm and meet your new readers here.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Yes. Now they have a taste. I was going to say a taste of you. It sounds a bit weird. They've had a first look at you and a taste of this book. And we are so grateful that you were here speaking with us today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I love the cover.
You do.
I do.
Thank you very much.
She's under the magnolia. It's beautiful.
And now I'm going to zoom in, but you can still see like the outline of houses, and it's a young girl, and it has the feel of the book.
It does.
Although she doesn't get to be alone in that physical sense that much, the character, right?
No.
With her 6 siblings and full plate. Thank you so much, Lowe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.